So Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade has just released for the Nintendo Switch 2, and this was a game that, honestly, I was looking forward to. And I know what you're saying to yourself, well, RGT, didn't you play and beat Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation 4 when it came out? And yes, you would be correct. And I really liked that game when I played it. I thought it was really well done. The reimagining of the Final Fantasy VII universe taking place within Midgar for the first portion of the game. It's kind of weird that they're making it having so many different versions, chopping it up into 3 or 4 separate games. But I thought it was cool. It looked good. It was fun. It was a good reimagining. And Final Fantasy VII, the vanilla game, to me is a game that I have a very weird relationship with because as a kid, I didn't really like it. Like, it was fine. I thought it was very overrated, though. I was more so into, like, strategy RPGs, action RPGs, and stuff like that. The turn-based stuff didn't really click with me at that time. But as time has gone on, I've definitely loved and grown to love the original version of the game. The characters, the story, what it did for RPGs in the West being one of the most successful, at least at the time of release and stuff, and really, turning Squaresoft into a household name. Obviously, Intergrade is an enhanced version of Final Fantasy VII Remake with additional content, with Yuffie and stuff like that, but that came out for the PlayStation 5, and I never picked it up. So when it was announced to be coming to the Switch 2, I was like, you know what? I'll check this out, because I feel like people are going to wonder really one main thing with this game, and that's how the game looks and performs, because it's Final Fantasy VII Remake at its core. Like, you probably have a good understanding of the story of the world. I'll do a very brief introduction here. You play as Cloud. You get hired as a mercenary to work with a group named Avalanche who's going up against Shinra because they think that they're doing bad things for the world and they're a ragtag group. And then you're having flashbacks to someone named Sephiroth, and all the stuff just comes to a head. Who's working with who? Who can you trust? This, that, and the other. Mako energy and just all sorts of stuff. Like, you could sit here and explain the story for hours and hours, but I'm not going to do that because I feel like I said, people have a decent grasp on what the game is about. It is essentially the first couple of hours of the original Final Fantasy VII taking place mostly within Midgar, and that is kind of the home base for this game itself. I do think the game is very good at its core. I think there is a little bit of padding. To me, it's not as bad as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Like, Rebirth's padding, I know people give me crap for thinking that Rebirth has a lot of padding, but it has a lot of padding. Like, I just booted up my save file 26, 27 hours into the game, and I'm having to learn how to fly chocobos and stuff like that. And it's like, this is kind of padding. Like, why do I need multiple different things to do it? Anyways, back to the game at hand with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on the Switch 2. Now, you've been looking at footage of the game that I have captured myself, and you probably have already drawn some conclusions about the visuals and performance. However, I'm still going to talk about it because it's my freaking video. I will say that I am pleasantly surprised with the look and the feel of the game. Now, the Switch 2 version of the game is 30 frames per second. So you're not getting 60 frames like you got on the PS5 or anything like that. However, to me, it comes down to frame pacing. I've said this numerous times before. I prefer 60 in all of my games. But if a game is 30 with good frame pacing, it's something that you can adjust to, and it's something that after a little while, for me personally, I am fine with. But if the frame rate is kind of all over the place, then that's where it becomes a problem. Now, the demo of the game that came out on the Switch 2 obviously didn't have any sort of frame pacing issues, but that was kind of a smaller contained area in which you were playing the first reactor that you go in and blow up. Obviously, once you get out into the game, you get more widespread areas with higher density of people and stuff like that. But in the 7+ hours that I have been playing the game, at least at the time of the filming of this video, I haven't really noticed any frame rate issues, or frame pacing issues, I should say. everything has been pretty smooth. Everything has looked like it should when it comes to the frame rate, and that also translates into the gameplay as well, because gameplay is affected by the frame rate. I didn't have any sort of hiccups. I never felt like I was in a scenario where it was like, I did this, why didn't the button combination work? Why didn't the input work, or something like that? And of course, this game has an active time battle system, meaning that it is no longer turn-based. Surprise, surprise. Did I just blow your mind? But it still kind of is turn-based, because you got to build up the active time battle system or whatever. But for the most part, you're hacking and slashing, kind of like an action game, and that's something that definitely relies a lot on feeling. But overall, like, I haven't had any issues or complaints really when it comes to the frame rate and the frame pacing of the game. I think it looks very good as well. Like, there's actually some very nice lighting and stuff that definitely caught my eye, especially in areas where you're just kind of, it's more of like the walking portion of the game, because really the game has a lot of downtime, more so than combat in it. Like, sometimes you'll go for like quite a while without combat in the game, but when you're walking around these different towns, whether it's the slums, whether it's this, that, or the other, you could kind of take in all of these sights and sounds. And I think, like, there's some very, very impressive visual effects going on here. I was playing the game on my HD TV. I don't know why I said it that way. I meant to say on my OLED TV upstairs, which has HDR and all that sort of stuff. I was sitting back rather far, and I was like, wow, this looks pretty damn good. Like, I was pleasantly surprised with how good it looks. Some of the different lighting effects and the way that lighting reflects off of different surfaces, such as like water or puddles, or just little things that really are just very impressive and very visually pleasing. Now, I won't say it's all perfect, because I did notice a few things, especially when I was capturing footage, because the monitor that I use to capture footage on is like literally like a foot and a half away from my face, so I'm looking at the game a little bit more close up. One thing I did notice is that people and sometimes environmental things will kind of like pop in and out if you're at a certain distance. Now, it's not something that a lot of people would notice, because they're kind of looking at what's right ahead of them. However, my eyes are very different than a lot of other people. Like, I'm going out of my way to look for these things, because it's just something worth mentioning. It doesn't like detract from the game or anything, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it makes the game bad, because that is something that exists, but it does exist, and I figured I would mention it to you guys. I think all the character models look very well done. The animations and stuff for them are very good. There is some kind of weird stuff going on with the hair from time to time, though, especially on Cloud. I don't know what it is with hair and Switch or Switch 2 games. It was more noticeable when I was capturing the footage than when I was playing with HDR on. Obviously, I don't have an HDR capture card, so I can't really like show that off. I don't know if that's a difference of me just sitting further back from the TV, or, this monitor not running in HDR at the time of the recording and it being so much closer. But I did notice it. I am going to mention it. Once again, it's not the end of the world or anything like that. But overall, I think the performance of the game, I think it's better than I expected it to be. I obviously, based off the demo, I expected it to be pretty good, but I think like some of the environments and some of the visual effects that happen with things like lighting and stuff are actually, very, very like, wow, this is gorgeous. And that's not to say that like, oh, the Switch 2 is as strong as the PlayStation 5, because this was a gorgeous PlayStation 4 game, if we're really being honest here. And, I don't care about power and what system it's on. A great-looking game is a great-looking game no matter what platform it's on. If it happens to be on a PlayStation 4, I mean, that game looks better than some PlayStation 5 games does, in my opinion, still. So to have a game of this quality, looking, running, and performing as well as it does on the Switch 2, I think is very impressive. And, of course, like, The combat is super fun. The story is interesting. There's tons of side quests. But the real thing to me that makes this game super attractive, it's the price. It's $40. Like, bro, like Nintendo would never with one of their games. They'll charge you more than they charged the last, the last version of it on the Switch 1. But this game is only $40. It's a 90 gig download, so it is massive. Make sure you clear out some room for it. But I think this is worth every penny. This to me, like, obviously we have a short list of games to kind of compare it to, but games that have a more sort of realistic art style to it, this to me is one of the best looking Switch 2 games out there. Like, when you're in these environments, you know what it is to me? I think the biggest thing for me is when I'm playing this game, it doesn't feel like I'm playing a modern Nintendo platform. And that's going to piss some people off because they're going to say, oh, Cyberpunk. But Cyberpunk gave me that same feeling too. Cyberpunk gave me that feeling where it's like, this feels kind of special because you're not used to this. You're not used to a game looking and performing as solid as it is on, whatever current Nintendo hardware it is, because they've obviously gone in a bit of a different direction. But that's the feeling I get with this game. Like, I kind of forget that I'm playing it on a Nintendo Switch 2. And if that makes you mad, you're a weirdo, because at the end of the day, that's really one of the biggest compliments you could give this piece of hardware. So I've been thoroughly enjoying my time with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. I will be playing through it again because there's a little bit of downtime for me. But I just wanted to show you guys some gameplay that I captured and share my thoughts on it that will maybe aid you in deciding whether or not to pick up this game for the Nintendo Switch 2. If you've never played it before, I mean, buy it. Like, let's be serious here. If you have played it before and you play a lot on PlayStation 5, I mean, I don't know. I kind of don't see the point for you unless you just want to have some portability to it with it. And it does look really good in handheld mode as well. I played quite a bit of it in handheld mode and was once again pleasantly surprised. But overall, very impressive port, and hopefully a sign of things to come for the Switch 2 when it comes to games like this, games of this size, and games of this stature. But like I said, let me know in the comments down below what you think about it. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated this video and you made it all the way to the end of the video, feel free to give it a thumbs down. That will not hurt my feelings. Let me know if you plan on picking this up. Like I said, it's $40. And you could do a lot worse with $40 on the Switch 2. I mean, that's like, what, 4 of those feet hentai games? I mean, if that's what you're into, pal, they got you covered. But for me, I'll be sticking with this. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.